The party was already in full swing when John and Sue arrived. Inside, Sue looked John full in the face and, without appearing to move her lips, said, "Look at that couple over by the window." John turned his head to take a look. "Don't look now," she hissed. "You're so obvious." Sue couldn't understand why John had to turn his head so indiscreetly, and John couldn't believe that Sue could see the other people in the room without doing so. In this chapter, we will explore research into the sensory perception differences between men and women and the implications they have on our relationships. Women as radar detectors. It is obvious to a woman when another woman is upset or feeling hurt, while a man would generally have to physically witness tears, a temper tantrum, or be slapped around the face before he'd even have a clue anything was going on. Like most female mammals, women are equipped with far more finely tuned sensory skills than men. As childbearers and nest defenders, they needed the ability to sense subtle mood and attitude changes in others. What is commonly called women's intuition is mostly a woman's acute ability to notice small details and changes in the appearance or behavior of others. It's something that, throughout history, has bewildered men who play around and are invariably caught. One of our friends said he couldn't believe how wonderful his wife's eyesight was when he had something to hide, but how it seemed to desert her totally when it came to backing the car into the garage. Estimating the distance between the car fender and the garage wall while moving is, however, a spatial skill located in the right hemisphere in men and is not strong in most women. We'll discuss that later in Chapter 5. My wife can see a blonde hair on my coat from 20 feet, but she hits the garage door when she parks the car. Nest defenders. To safeguard their family's survival, needed to be able to pick up small changes in the behavior of their offspring that could signal pain, hunger, injury, aggression, or depression. Males, being lunch chasers, were never around the cave long enough to learn to read nonverbal signals or the ways of interpersonal communication. Neuropsychologist Professor Reuben Gur of the University of Pennsylvania used brain scan tests to show that when a man's brain is in a resting state, at least 70% of its electrical activity is shut down. Scans of women's brains showed 90% activity during the same state, confirming that women are constantly receiving and analyzing information from their environment. A woman knows her children's friends, hopes, dreams, romances, secret fears, what they are thinking, how they are feeling, and, usually, what mischief they are plotting. Men are vaguely aware of some other people also living in the house. The eyes have it. The eye is an extension of the brain that sits outside the skull. The retina at the back of the eyeball contains about 130 million rod-shaped cells called photoreceptors to deal with black and white, and 7 million cone-shaped cells to handle color. The X chromosome provides these color cells. Women have two X chromosomes, which gives them a greater variety of cones than men, and this difference is noticeable in how women describe colors in greater detail. A man will use basic color descriptions like red, blue, and green, but a woman will talk of bone, aqua, teal, mauve, and apple green. Human eyes have noticeable whites which other primates lack. This allows for the movement of the eye and the direction of the gaze, which are vital to human face-to-face communication. Women's eyes display more white than men's eyes because close-range personal communication is an integral part of female bonding, and more white allows a greater range of eye signals to be sent and received in the direction that the eyes move. This type of eye communication is not critical to most other species of animal, and so they have little or no whites and rely on body language as the main form of communication. Eyes in the back of her head? Well, not quite, but close. Women not only have a greater variety of cones in the retina, they also have wider peripheral vision than men. As a nest defender, a woman has brain software that allows her to receive an arc of at least 45 degrees clear vision to each side of her head and above and below her nose. Many women's peripheral vision is effective up to almost 180 degrees. A man's eyes are larger than a woman's, and his brain configures them for a type of long-distance tunnel vision, which means that he can see clearly and accurately directly in front of him and over greater distances, almost like a pair of binoculars. Women have wider peripheral vision. Men have tunnel vision. As a hunter, a man needed vision that would allow him to zero in on and pursue targets in the distance. He evolved with almost blinkered vision so that he would not be distracted from targets, whereas a woman needed eyes to allow a wide arc of vision so that she could monitor any predators sneaking up on the nest. This is why modern men can find their way effortlessly to a distant pub, but can never find things in fridges, cupboards, and drawers. In the UK in 1997, there were 4,132 child pedestrians killed or injured on the roads, of which 2,640 were boys and 1,492 were girls. In Australia, boy pedestrian fatalities and injuries are more than double that of girls. Boys take more risks crossing the road than girls, and this, combined with poorer peripheral vision, increases their injury rate. You can increase your peripheral vision range with practice, just as fighter pilots do. The arc of a person's peripheral vision can also increase under life-threatening circumstances. During a prison riot at Australia's Perth prison in 1999, inmates held several prison officers hostage. They announced that unless their demands were met, the officers would be killed. Prison officer Lance Bremen reported that, until that time, he had typical male tunnel vision. Having survived the incident, his peripheral vision had increased to almost 180 degrees. Because of the trauma of the event and the fear of being killed, his brain had expanded his vision range to monitor anyone trying to sneak up on him. Why women's eyes see so much? Billions of photons of light, equal to 100 megabytes of computer data, strike the retina of the eye every second. This is too much for the brain to handle, so it edits the information down to only what is necessary for survival. For example, once your brain understands all the colors of the sky, it selects only what it needs to see the color blue. Our brain narrows our vision so that we can concentrate on a specific thing. If we are searching for a needle in a carpet, we have a more concentrated narrow field of vision. Men's brains, being pre-wired for hunting, see a much narrower field. Women's brains decode information over a wider peripheral range because of their past defending the nest. The slippery case of the missing butter. Every woman in the world has had the following conversation with a male who is standing in front of an open fridge. David, where's the butter? Jan, it's in the fridge. David, I'm looking there, but I can't see any butter. Jan, well, it's there. I put it in 10 minutes ago. David, no. You must have put it somewhere else. There's definitely no butter in this fridge. At that, Jan strides into the kitchen, thrusts her arm into the fridge, and, as if by magic, produces a tub of butter. Inexperienced men sometimes feel that this is a trick, and they accuse women of always hiding things from them in drawers and cupboards. Socks, shoes, underwear, jam, butter, car keys, wallets, they're all there. They just can't see them. With her wider arc of peripheral vision, a woman can see most of the contents of a fridge or cupboard without moving her head. Her estrogen hormones allow her to identify matching items in a drawer, cupboard, or across a room, and later remember objects in a complex random pattern, such as where the butter or jam is in the refrigerator. New research also suggests that male brains are searching in the fridge for the word butter. If it's facing the wrong way, he virtually can't see it. This is why men move their heads. Men move their heads from side to side and up and down as they scan for the missing objects. These differences in vision have important implications throughout our lives. Car insurance statistics, for instance, show female drivers are less likely to be hit from the side in an accident at an intersection than male drivers. Women's greater peripheral vision allows them to see traffic approaching from the side. They are more likely to be hit in the front or back of the car while attempting to reverse parallel park, as that challenges their less developed spatial skills. A woman's life is much less stressful when she understands the problems men have seeing things at close range. When a woman tells a man, "It's in the cupboard," it is less stressful for him to believe her and continue the search. Men and ogling. Wider peripheral vision is the reason why women rarely get caught ogling men. Almost every man has been accused at some time or other of ogling the opposite sex, but few women receive the same complaint from men. Sex researchers everywhere report that women look at men's bodies as much as, and sometimes more than, men look at women's. Yet women, with their superior peripheral vision, rarely get caught. Seeing is believing. Most people won't believe something until they see the proof, but can you trust your eyes? Millions believe in UFOs despite the fact that 92% of all UFO sightings are in remote country areas on Saturday nights around 11 o'clock, just after the pubs close. There has never been a UFO sighting by a prime minister or president, and UFOs never land on a university campus. government research laboratory, or parliament. And they never land in bad weather. Researcher Edward Boring devised the following illustration to show how we each perceive different things in the same picture. Women are more likely to see an old woman with her chin tucked into the collar of her fur coat, but men are more likely to see the left side profile of a young woman who is looking away. The picture of the table also shows that what you see is not necessarily what you get. Your brain is fooled into believing that the far side of the table is longer than the front side. Women are usually amused by this, but men demand proof and grab a ruler to measure it. Why men should drive at night. While a woman can see better in the dark than a man, especially at the red end of the spectrum, a man's eyes allow for better long-distance vision over a narrower field, which gives him much better and therefore safer long-distance night vision than a woman. Combined with his right brain spatial ability, a man can separate and identify the movement of other vehicles on the road ahead and behind. Most women can testify to what is a kind of night blindness, the inability to distinguish which side of the road approaching traffic is on. This is a task that a man's hunting vision is equipped to handle. This means that if you are going on a long driving trip, it makes sense for a woman to drive during the day and for a man to drive at night. Women can see more detail in the dark than men, but only over a shorter, wider field. On long trips, men should drive at night and women drive in the day. Men suffer greater eye strain than women because their eyes are configured for long distances and must be constantly readjusted to look at a computer screen or read a newspaper. A woman's eyes are better suited for close-range activities, giving her a longer working time on fine detail. In addition, her brain is wired for coordinated fine motor capability in a small area, which means the average woman is excellent at threading a needle and reading detail on computer screen. Why women have a sixth sense. For centuries, women were burned at the stake for possessing supernatural powers. These included the ability to predict outcomes of relationships, spot liars, talk to animals, and uncover the truth. In 1978, we conducted an experiment for a television program which highlighted women's ability to read the body language signals of babies. At a maternity hospital, we collated a selection of 10-second film clips of crying babies and asked the mothers to watch the clips with the sound turned down. This way, the mothers received only visual information. Most mothers could quickly detect a range of emotions ranging from hunger and pain to wind or tiredness. When the fathers did the same test, their success rate was less than 10%. Fathers could only pick more than 2 emotions. Even then, we suspect many were probably guessing. Many fathers would triumphantly announce, "The baby wants its mother." Most men had little, if any, ability to decode the differences in baby cries. We also tested the grandparents to see if age affected the outcome. Most grandmothers scored 50 to 70% of the mother's score, while many grandfathers could not even identify their own grandchild. Our study with identical twins revealed that most grandfathers were unable to identify each twin individually, whereas most female family members had less difficulty with this task. In a room of 50 couples, it takes the average woman less than 10 minutes to analyze the relationship between each couple in the room. When a woman enters a room, her superior sensory abilities enable her to rapidly identify couples who are getting on with each other, who's had an argument, who is making advances on whom and where the competitive or friendly women are. When a man enters a room, our cameras show a different story. Men scan the room looking for exits and entries. His ancient brain wiring evaluates where a potential attack may come from and possible escape routes. Next, he looks for familiar faces or possible enemies and then scans the room layout. His logical mind will register things that need to be fixed or repaired, such as broken windows or a blown light bulb. Meanwhile, the women have scanned all the faces in the room and know what's what, who's who, and how they are all feeling. Why men can't lie to women. Our body language research reveals that, in face-to-face communications, nonverbal signals account for 60 to 80% of the impact of the message, while vocal sounds make up 20 to 30%. The other 7 to 10% is words. A woman's superior sensory equipment picks up and analyzes this information, and her brain's ability to rapidly transfer between hemispheres makes her more proficient at integrating and deciphering verbal, visual, and other signals. This is why most men have difficulty lying to a woman face-to-face. But, as most women know, lying to a man face-to-face is comparatively easy, as he does not have the necessary sensitivity to spot incongruencies between her verbal and nonverbal signals. Most men, if they're going to lie to a woman, would be far better off doing it over the phone, in a letter, or with all the lights off, and a blanket over their head. She hears better too. Women hear better than men and are excellent at distinguishing high-pitched sounds. A woman's brain is programmed to hear a baby cry in the night, whereas a father may be oblivious to it and sleep on. If there is a kitten crying in the distance, a woman will hear it. A man, however, with his superior spatial and directional skills, can tell her where it is. Dripping taps drive women crazy, while men sleep. At 1 week, baby girls can distinguish their mother's voice or the cry of another baby from the other sounds that are present in the same room. Baby boys can't. Males use their left brain only for listening, but females use both brains for this task. The female brain has the ability to separate and categorize sound and make decisions about each sound. This accounts for a woman's ability to listen to one person in a face-to-face conversation while monitoring another person's conversation. It also explains why a man has difficulty hearing a conversation while there is a television on in the background or dishes are being clattered in the sink. If a phone rings, a man will demand people stop talking. Music is turned down and the TV is switched off for him to answer it. A woman simply answers the phone. Women read between the lines. Women have superior sensitivity in differentiating tone changes in voice volume and pitch. This enables them to hear emotional changes in children and adults. Consequently, for every man who can sing in tune, there are 8 women who can do it. This ability goes a long way to explaining the women's phrase, "Don't use that tone of voice with me," when arguing with men and boys. Most males don't have a clue what she's talking about. Tests conducted on babies reveal that baby girls respond almost twice as much to a loud sound than boys. This explains why girls are more easily soothed and comforted by high-pitched baby talk than boys, and why mothers intuitively sing lullabies to girls, but talk to, or play with, boys. Female hearing advantage contributes significantly to what is called women's intuition, and is one of the reasons why a woman can read between the lines of what people say. Men, however, shouldn't despair. They are excellent at identifying and imitating animal sounds, which would have been a significant advantage for the ancient hunter. Sadly, that's not quite as much used today. Men can hear direction. Women are better at differentiating sounds, but men can point to where they're coming from. Combined with the male ability to identify and imitate animal sounds, this skill makes him a highly efficient hunter of game. So how does sound get converted in the brain into a map? Professor Masakazu Konishi of the California Institute of Technology discovered some of the answers using barn owls, birds that are better than humans at pinpointing where a sound is coming from. Play them a sound, and they will turn their heads to face its source. Konishi discovered a group of cells in the auditory region of their brains that mapped the exact location of a sound. Speakers that played the same sound to each of the owl's ears at a different rate of speed. About 200 millionths of a second allowed the owl's brains to form a 3D spatial map of the sound's location. The owls then turned their heads towards the sound, allowing them to locate prey or avoid approaching enemies. This appears to be the same ability that men use to pinpoint sound. Why boys don't listen? Boys are often chastised by their teachers and parents for not listening. But as boys grow, particularly approaching puberty, their ear canals undergo growth spurts that can cause a temporary form of deafness. Female teachers have been found to reprimand girls differently to boys and seem intuitively to understand male and female hearing differences. If a girl refuses to keep eye contact while the teacher berates her, a female teacher will continue the reprimand. If a boy refuses eye contact, many female teachers intuitively understand that he probably either can't hear or is not listening, and will say, "Look at me when I speak to you." Unfortunately, boys are equipped for effective seeing rather than hearing. For an easy demonstration of this, just count the number of Fs in the following sentence. Finished files are the result of years of scientific research. Boys score better than girls at seeing that there are 5 Fs. If the statement is read aloud, however, girls are better than boys at hearing the correct number of Fs. Men miss the details. Lynn and Chris are driving home from a party. He's driving, she's navigating, and they've just had an argument about her, telling him to turn left when she really meant right. 9 minutes of silence has passed, and he suspects something is up. "Darling, is everything okay?" asks Chris. "Yes, everything's fine," Lynn answers. Her emphasis on the word fine confirms that things are actually far from fine. He thinks back to the party. Did I do something wrong tonight? Asks Chris. I don't want to talk about it, she snaps. This means she's angry and does want to talk about it. Meanwhile, he's at a complete loss to understand what he's done to upset her. Please tell me. What did I do? He pleads. I don't know what I did. In most conversations like this one, the man is telling the truth. He simply doesn't understand the problem. Okay then, she says, I'll tell you the problem even though you're playing that stupid act. But it's not an act. He genuinely doesn't have a handle on the problem. She takes a deep breath. That bimbo was hanging around you all night giving you come-on signals, and you didn't get rid of her, you encouraged her. Now Chris is completely dumbstruck. What bimbo? What come-on signals? He didn't see anything. You see, while the bimbo, this is a woman's expression. Men would describe a woman like that as sexy, had been talking to him. He hadn't noticed that she was tilting her pelvis at him, pointing her foot his way, flicking her hair, stroking her thigh, massaging her earlobes, giving him longer than usual glances, stroking the stem of her wine glass and talking like a schoolgirl. He's a hunter. He can spot a zebra on the horizon and tell you how fast it's moving. He doesn't have a woman's ability to pick up the visual, vocal, and body language signals that say someone's on the make. Every woman at the party saw what the bimbo was doing even without moving their heads. And a telepathic, bitch alert, was sent and received by all other women at the party. Most of the men missed it completely. So when a man claims he is telling the truth about these accusations, he probably is. Male brains are not equipped to hear or see details. The magic of touch. Touch can be life-giving. Early tests conducted on monkeys by Harlow and Zimmerman showed that lack of touch on infant monkeys resulted in depression, illness, and premature death. Similar results have been found in neglected children. An impressive study on babies from 10 weeks of age to 6 months found that the offspring of mothers who were taught to stroke their babies had dramatically fewer colds and sniffles and less vomiting and diarrhea than those whose mothers didn't stroke them. Other research found that women who were neurotic or depressed recovered much more quickly according to the number of times they were hugged and the duration of those hugs. Anthropologist James Prescott, who pioneered the study of child rearing and violence, found that societies in which children were rarely touched affectionately had the highest rates of adult violence. Children brought up with affectionate care are usually ended up growing into better, healthier, and happier adults. Sex offenders and child molesters both tended to have pasts characterized by rejection, violence, a lack of cuddles as children, and childhoods, often spent in remote institutions. Many non-touching cultures love cats and dogs as they allow them to experience touch via stroking and patting their pets. Pet patting therapy has proved to be a valuable way of helping people overcome depression and other mental problems. Just look at how the English, the very antipathy of a touchy-feely race, love their pets. As Germaine Greer said, even crushed against his brother in the tube, the average Englishman pretends desperately that he is alone. Women are touchy-feely. The skin is the largest organ in the body, measuring around 2 square meters. Distributed unevenly across it are 800,000 receptors for pain, 200,000 for cold, and 500,000 for touch and pressure. From birth, girls are dramatically more sensitive to touch and, as an adult, a woman's skin is at least 10 times more sensitive to touch and pressure than a man's. In one authoritative study, it was found that the boys who tested most sensitive to touch felt even less than the least sensitive girls. Female skin is thinner than male skin and has an extra fat layer below it for more warmth in winter and to provide greater endurance. Oxytocin is the hormone that stimulates the urge to be touched and fires up our touch receptors. It's no wonder that women, with receptors that are 10 times more sensitive than men's, attach so much importance to cuddling their men, children, and friends. Our body language research shows that Western women are 4 to 6 times more likely to touch another woman in a social conversation than a man is likely to touch another man. Women use a greater range of touch expressions than men, describing a successful person as having a magic touch and others as being thin-skinned or thick-skinned. Women love staying in touch and dislike those who get under your skin. They talk about feelings, giving someone the personal touch, being touchy, and annoying people by rubbing them up the wrong way. In 1999, A research team led by Michael Meany at McGill University in Quebec, Canada, showed baby rats that are constantly groomed and cared for by their parents develop more brain mass and higher intelligence than baby rats who had less caring parents. A study with psychiatric patients showed that, under pressure, men avoid touch and retreat into their own world. More than half the women in the same test, on the other hand, initiated approaches to men, not for sex, but for the intimacy of touch. When a woman is emotionally cut off or angry with a man, she is likely to respond by saying, "Don't touch me," a phrase that has little meaning to men. The lesson? To win points with women, use lots of appropriate touching but avoid groping. To raise mentally healthy children, cuddle them a lot. A woman is 4 to 6 times more likely to touch another woman in a social conversation than a man would another man. Why men are so thick-skinned? Men have thicker skin than women, which explains why women get more wrinkles than men. The skin on a man's back is 4 times thicker than his stomach skin, a legacy from his four-legged animal past which gave more protection from a rear attack. Most of a boy's sensitivity to touch is lost by the time he reaches puberty and his body prepares itself for the rigors of the hunt. Males needed desensitized skin to run through prickly bushes, wrestle animals, and fight enemies without the pain slowing them down. When a man is focused on a physical task or sporting activity, he is unlikely even to be aware of injury. A boy doesn't really lose skin sensitivity at puberty, it just all goes to one area. When a man is not focused on a task, his threshold of pain is much lower than a woman's. When a man moans, "Make me some chicken soup, fresh orange juice, get me a hot water bottle, call the doctor, and make sure my will is in order," it usually means he's got a slight head cold. Men are also less sensitive to a woman who is suffering pain or discomfort. If she's doubled up in pain, has a temperature of 104 degrees and is shivering under the blankets, he says, "Is everything okay, darling?" But he's thinking, if I ignore it, maybe she'll have sex. She's in bed anyway. Men do feel sensitivity when watching football or aggressive sports, however. If men are watching a boxing match on TV and one of the boxers is felled by a low blow, a woman will say, "Oh, that must have hurt," while the men all groan, double over, and actually feel the pain. A taste for life. Women's senses of taste and smell are superior to men's. We have up to 10,000 taste receptors to detect at least 4 major tastes: sweet and salt on the tip of the tongue, sour on the sides, and bitter at the back. Japanese researchers are currently testing a 5th, taste the taste of fat. Men score higher on discerning salt and bitter tastes, which is why they drink beer. And women are far superior in discerning sweet and sugar tastes, which is why there are far more female chocoholics in the world than male. As the nest defender and fruit gatherer, tasting foods to check they were sweet and ripe enough to pass on to her brood, it was an advantage to have a highly refined sugar-tasting palate. This explains why women love sugary sweets and why most food tasters are women. Something in the air. Not only is a woman's sense of smell better than the average man's, it is even more sensitive around the ovulation stage of her monthly cycle. Her nose can detect the pheromones and musk-like odors associated with men, and these are scents that cannot be detected consciously. Her brain is able to decode the state of a man's immune system, and, if it's complementary to, or stronger than her own immune system, she may describe a man as attractive or strangely magnetic. If her immune system is stronger than his, she is likely to find him less attractive. Brain researchers have discovered that a woman's brain can analyze these immune system differences within 3 seconds of a meeting. Complementary immune systems pass on an advantage to offspring by giving them a greater chance of survival. One outcome of all this research has been the number of oils and potions now being marketed for men that supposedly contain the secret of surefire pheromone attraction, driving women wild with desire. A strong immune system can make a man seem strangely compelling. The X-Files. Our evolutionary roles have equipped us with the biological skills and senses we need for survival. What is often called witchcraft, supernatural power, and women's intuition has been scientifically tested and measured since the 1980s and, for the most part, comes down to a woman's superiority in all the perceptive senses. Most witches were women who were put to death by men who could not understand the biological differences. Women are simply better at picking up the small nuances in body language, vocal cues, tone of voice, and other sensory stimuli. They can also read attitudes and emotions in animals. This allowed ancient women to determine whether or not an animal approaching her nest was dangerous or friendly. A woman can even tell if a dog is feeling embarrassed or if a horse is about to kick. Most men cannot imagine what an embarrassed dog looks like. Women counsel cats. When women are not looking, men kick cats. For nest-defending women, being dexterous with both hands would have been an advantage to the process of gathering as it gives twice the speed. Consequently, many women do not have a specific area in either brain for identifying left from right. It was never necessary. This is why there are disproportionately more ambidextrous women than men. It also explains why women everywhere are unfairly criticized by men who, frustrated at being given wrong directions by a woman, yell, "Don't you even know your left from right?" The correct answer is no. A dominant right hand is vital to target hitting, but not critical to fast gathering. Because of their superior abilities in this area, modern women are still victimized by their attraction to astrologers, psychics, tarot card readers, numerologists, and others who offer an explanation for female intuition in exchange for hard-earned money. A woman's highly refined sensors contribute significantly to the early maturity of adolescent girls. By the age of 17, most girls can function as adults, while the boys are still giving each other wedgies at the swimming pool and lighting farts. Why men are called insensitive? It's not so much that women have super senses, it's more that men's senses have been dulled, comparatively speaking. In a woman's world of higher perceptiveness, she expects a man to read her verbal, vocal, and body language signals and to anticipate her needs, just as another woman would do. For the evolutionary reasons discussed, this simply is not the case. A woman quietly assumes that a man will know what she wants or needs, and, when he doesn't pick up on her cues, she accuses him of being insensitive. Wouldn't have a clue. Men everywhere say, "Am I supposed to be a mind reader?" Research proves that men are poor mind readers. But the good news is that most can be trained to improve their awareness of nonverbal and vocal messages. The next chapter has a unique test that will show you the sexual orientation of your brain and why you are the way you are.